Hi, my name's Tommy Hinrichs, and I'm a principal consultant with Equal Experts. I'm an expert generalist, and I've done pretty much everything through the SDLC in the last 25 years. Mostly my background is as a back-end engineer, but I'm currently doing a bunch of data engineering work. So consequently, I'm working in Python augmented by AI engineering tooling. So with the release of GPT-5, I wanted to be able to test its ability to work unsupervised. So can it provide value while I'm making lunch? Since it had such improvements in token management, I wanted to see if it would stay on task better than Sonnet 4. And it really did. The outputs are at about the same level as Sonnet 4, but it was able to stay on task better. So as you can see, GPT-5 can stay on task across a small breadth of languages and tools, but it wouldn't be responsible to leave it unattended for long. It can write tests, but they could have an infinite loop and it'll just spin. It could write deployment scripts that don't actually run the tests after it builds before it deploys. And all that said, it's probably the first foundational model that might actually have a chance at creating useful results with just small one-shot prompts like this one. So anytime you want to talk about AI-enabled software delivery or anything else, just send me a message or email me at tommy.hinrichs@equalexperts.com. Thank you. Hey guys, I thought I would try out GPT-5 High Reasoning and give it the blog post that I found recently about using SERP API to scrape Google Scholar and see if I could give a very simple prompt, way simpler than would have worked with, say, Claude 4, and just say, here's this implementation, bring it up to Python 3.12, you should have a README, some tests, the implementation, a Docker file, cloud build for deployment to cloud run, shell script to run everything, and I would just let it go. So while it fired up, I went and made lunch and came back to, well, I'll get to what I came back to in a minute. But you can see it opened up the browser, understood what was in the blog post, even gives you a representation of how it sees all of that, i.e. Turned into Markdown, and then figures out how it's going to actually implement. Figured out it needed to understand more about SERP API, went to that web page, looked at the Scholar's profile, the Scholar profile, the Scholar author profile, Scholar author API. So there's really 3 different APIs for Google Scholar on SERP API, and then tried to determine how pagination works, and once again looked at the blog post again. So once it figured out all of that, it went through and tried to do some more parsing and set up the project. You can see it had a bunch of errors, but the good thing isn't that the errors happened. The good thing is that over multiple attempts, it resolved for itself what it needed to do. And still, GPT-5 was able to interface with Windsurf and keep operating. So it was kind of self-healing. And so then it went and grabbed more info. Now that it understood the SERP APIs better, it grabbed more info about Google Scholar, off the site, and then started trying to figure out how it's going to write everything. And so the first thing it did was the PyProject TOML, and you probably don't need to go through, or don't need me to go through all of the various code, but you can see it started with tests, as I tell it. It created the implementations tied to that test, created a command line to run it, got to the point down here quite a bit later of running tests after it created the Docker file, the cloud build, a shell script to run locally. And you can see here, when I came back from lunch, it was hung. So there was an issue in the implementation. Who knows how far it would have gotten if this didn't occur. And so I had to guide it a little on what it was doing, that it wasn't using the virtual environment it created. It didn't use its own test script, for example. And then it realized what was happening and went and fixed everything. So it found it had an infinite loop. It went and fixed it, kept implementing more things, told root cause and said what the fix should be, and interestingly didn't actually go fix it. I had to go tell it, okay, go do the fixes you told me about. And then it fixed them, committed the code, and we kept going. I noticed after a little bit, I saw things like this HTTP API it came back with. I'm like, I don't need an HTTP API. I just want this CLI. So that's my fault. I told it it needed to do cloud build via cloud build over to cloud run, but I didn't tell it a cloud run job or a cloud run service. So it just did both. So then I realized I wasn't clear enough in my requirements, helped it clean all that up, and now we're at a point where it more closely matches what we would need a cloud run job to be, and it's at the point where all these tests pass and I can start trying to pull authors. Problem we may have is that you can't just pull all authors. You have to have a search, and that search provides results, and then you can pull people. We could always search all 26 first letters of first name and last name, but there's got to be a better way. I'll see what we can do here. But GPT-5 ended up creating all of the implementation, all of the README, all of the tests, the Docker file, the cloud build, the PyProject TOML for all of our requirements, and a fairly reasonable README. And interestingly, this implementation is clearly structured very differently than what was in the blog post. So you'll be able to use GPT-5, give it some time. High reasoning is really good so far, and it can keep its focus on a task for tens of minutes, even though there were many different kinds of implementation here, many different languages, many different aspects, build, deployment, containerization, testing, etc., README. It was able to keep the task in mind and not go off the rails and start doing things that it shouldn't be doing. Incidentally, the tests are much cleaner than like Sonnet 4 tests would be. In fact, there may not be enough coverage here, but I'll see as I go. There was a pothole or gotcha that it wasn't able to figure out, and I would have really given it kudos if it did. This blog post uses an API that has since been deprecated. It could have realized this when it, for example, went to the Google Scholar Author API, Or maybe it's the Google Scholar Profiles API. Yes. You can see this Google Scholar Profiles API, which I will bring up in a second, has been deprecated. So it maybe it should have been able to figure that out, but it took me a while to figure that out yesterday. So you can see these are all the pages it opened when it was doing its analysis. This browser is tied directly into Windsurf, so it can tell what's happening when it surfs the web. So that's my initial impressions of GPT-5. GPT-5 High Reasoning right now costs the same as Sonnet 4, and it's 5 to 10 times better. Much better at staying on task across a large time span. It ended up creating this plan of what work to do. And let me see if I can get to the plan real quick. Oh, where's the plan? View plan. So it creates a plan, goes through the notes, determines what it needs to be doing, and goes step by step through all of the pieces. Anyway, I'm liking what I see so far in GPT-5. So anytime you want to talk about AI-enabled software delivery or anything else, just send me a message or email me at tommy.hinrichs, Hinrichs, @equalexperts.com.